Hello, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors and Cazoo, with Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters from across the franchised and independent dealer sectors.
Well, as this show goes out on Saturday morning, we're just one day away from the 26 plate change. Exciting.
26 plate already, yes.
Yeah.
Big month of the year. We'll see how it goes. We'll be obviously trying to keep up with the new car registrations, what impact that will have on the sector, but it's a crucial quarter, isn't it, for everybody?
It is, absolutely so. And I mean, there's some really strong offers out there at the moment. So, I mean, you can't go far without seeing adverts on TV, radio, whatever. And there's a lot of activity out there, isn't there? And I suspect there's a huge amount of focus on retail sales, which, as we've been reporting over quite a few months now, have been a bit on the slow side because most of the new car sales are coming from the business sector. So I do expect to see a huge push on retail and possibly a bit of pre-reg activity.
Yeah. I think we'll probably see a little bit of that tactical pre-reg self-registration activity, no doubt, in this first quarter. I mean, as I say, it's a crucial quarter for both dealers and OEMs. You know, it sets the scene to a degree for the remainder of the year. It's about banking this first quarter. Clearly, I think at the minute, new car registrations is crucial now. And as you say, Curtis, I mean, you have to look far, do you, to see a lot of the campaigns, the incentives, the offers on the table, both from the new entrant manufacturers and the traditional established manufacturers trying to compete for that business. And, you know, whether it's 75 manufacturers all trying to get that business from the consumer in the fleet sector.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. And staying on that theme of the plate change, we're joined this week by Ian Goldbold for his latest top tip. And he's actually looking at content marketing strategies in the build-up to the plate change. So do listen to that because he's got some great insights.
Yeah, definitely. And it's crucial that what he's got to say in terms of some of those top tips and what's happening and what he's hearing across the market on the order take for this March plate. And this week we've managed to catch up with Jeremy Yea, who is the senior head of valuations at CAP HPI. And it's a regular catch up with what's been happening on trade values. And this month we caught up with him, particularly looking at what's happening in February, what happens to trade values in the month of February as we move into March, and what that means to the valuations of those used cars as we enter the March period. So we've got an extract from that this morning on the podcast, but we do always urge you to tune into your podcast feed from earlier in the week to listen to the full interview, because it does. We always think it brings it to life a little bit, doesn't it, on these catch-ups with Jeremy and Chris?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of context around what was only a small movement, but as Jeremy and indeed Chris says, there's loads of moving parts within that. So do check out the full interview that we did with Jeremy.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo. If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer group bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our supplier special episodes, then get in touch with Curtis and Philip at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
Companies already featured in our supplier specials include Impel, Prospecting Dynamics, iVendi, ETT, Generational, MTC, and Jigcar. And you can find all of them and indeed many more on your podcast feed. And if you'd like us to profile your business, then just message us at motortraderadio@yahoo.com. Next up is that extract from our interview with CAP HPI's Jeremy Yea looking at February's trade values.
Well, let's get straight into it. I mean, as usual, talk us through the headline trade value movement at that 3-year 60 benchmark and how that figure does compare to previous February into March movements that you've seen previously.
Yeah, so February live values into March monthly. That equated to a 3-year 60 down at 0.4%, which is against the backdrop or a seasonal average of a 0.4 increase. So it is obviously a bit less than what it has been in previous months, previous years, and even against the seasonal average. But I think there's a lot driving that. That 0.4 equates to around about just under £75. And yeah, it's been a very interesting month in terms of historic, in terms of previous years. Last year it increased 0.4, up 0.4%. 2024 it was up 0.7, and in 2023 it was up 1%. This movement actually registers the third time it's dropped since we've been registered with CAP Live Value, since going back to 2012. So, yeah, slightly unusual.
Well, as you say, Jeremy, slightly unusual, and we'll start to dig into what actually drove that. But before we look specifically at fuel trends, which is always that hot topic when we catch up with you, it was only a small movement this month, but there were some notable price movements by both age and price points. Can you talk us through some of those?
Yeah, sure. So 1 year 10K, it dropped 0.6%, which equates to £193. At 5 years, so once we get to the 5-year point, it is slightly more positive. So it was a flat movement at 5-year 80. And once we get to between 5 and 10 years, it was up 1% overall. So the older side of the market is definitely more positive, but we know probably reasons for that. There's obviously a lot less vehicles between that 5 to 7 to 8 years old and beyond because of the COVID impact. So yeah, the older end of the market strong, and the continuation from January really, with the younger age 3 years or sub 3 years, slightly more of a negative.
And that is a trend we have seen over quite a few months now, isn't it? In terms of those older vehicles, either holding their value or increasing slightly.
Yeah, I think that the price point part of the market, I think that's really hot. It's really the hot ticket. I think lots of retailers across the whole market, and that could be anything from independent supermarkets and even franchise dealers looking to buy price range vehicles. And I think that's why that end of the market, or the older part of the market, is really quite interesting in terms of the movement, and mostly positive.
And how did the various vehicle sectors perform? I couldn't help but notice that despite the appalling weather we've had so far this year, it was actually a good month for convertibles as well as coupes and cabriolets, wasn't it?
I think it shocked us all. I don't think we expected with the deluge of rain we've had all over the country, and the mixed weather and flooding and what have you, that cabriolets would go up in a month where it's been pretty grey and miserable. So yeah, at 3 years, convertible went up 0.5%, and coupe cabriolet went up almost 1%. So yeah, very unusual. But yeah, looking at some of the other sectors, a bit more mixed, I would say, across the board. SUV was down 0.5%. Lower medium, so the hatchback sector, that was down 0.8%. But we did have some increases. There was a small increase for City Car, which was up 0.1%, and Super Mini, which is obviously quite another big sector, big mainstream sector, that was down 0.2%. So quite a varied mix in terms of movements there. And I think probably goes to the point of the price range market of certain price points and price bandings are really quite good news.
We must have optimistic dealers hoping for the weather to turn or banking on a hot summer and stocking up early, Jeremy, for the convertible purchases.
Absolutely. Look, they've become, they're a real rarity now, aren't they? There's lots of
Yeah.
manufacturers who are not making convertibles anymore, and I think at certain age points, they are rare, but people still like to drive convertibles. So I think some of them can look quite cheap as well when you look at them in terms of monetary value, and you think, well, why wouldn't you? So we all need a bit of positivity at the minute in terms of the weather. So why not put a convertible in the showroom or wherever, and hopefully you'll get someone who's going to be like-minded, wants a bit of positivity in their life as well.
Ever the optimist there, Curtis?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happening here is that there's dealers out there who are looking at their long-range weather forecasts
Yes.
for the next 2 or 3 months and thinking, well, it can only get better.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of the sector would normally try and be out in the fourth quarter of the year trying to build up some of that coupe cab convertible product when it is low in the values, just to get it ahead before it starts to rise. Because the risk is, as the weather does start to improve and people start to think about those bank holiday weekends and holidays, then we do tend to see that uptick in value. So it does seem a bit odd with the weather that we've had recently.
Yes,
the improving sector is the convertibles. But I think always with Jeremy there, do listen, because that is a few minutes of a whole interview there with Jeremy, and within that he does talk about what he expects to see as we enter the month of March, in terms of that supply demand, stock concentration, etc. So if you haven't listened to it already, as we said earlier, you do have a listen to the full interview. And now we'll take a look at this weekend's headlines.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo.
Headlines this week come from the Financial Times, AM, Motor Trade News, Motor Trader and Car Dealer, starting with car makers look likely to win a reprieve from the Financial Conduct Authority's mis-selling motor finance redress scheme. Yes, we're back to the redress scheme. We've got the latest on that. Buyers value honesty and no pressure sales from dealers, according to new research from Motors and Cazoo. The EV grant has been boosted to now cover almost half the cost of installing chargers for households and businesses. Then, in the second half, we have the welcome return of two familiar brand names. Firstly, Mitsubishi, they're relaunching in the UK. It's something we reported on recently. That relaunch gathers momentum as it announces plans to build a 60-strong dealer network. And Cazana is back in the motor trade as Percayso Vehicle Intelligence announces a rebrand.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo.
As Curtis said there, we're heading back to the redress, the motor finance redress scheme, and this is in the Financial Times, the FT, this week, that car makers to win reprieve in 11 billion UK motor finance redress scheme, saying that regulators planned climb down follows lobbying by banks and car groups with in-house lenders. Now, this is, would you class this as a bit of a U-turn? I'm not quite sure what this is happening here. But I mean, when we covered this initially, Curtis, we thought this was quite odd in terms of going after those, those captive finance houses as part of this redress scheme. But it looks like a bit of lobbying has had an impact.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, this one, and the Financial Times really had the lead on this. That they've got some well-connected sources on this story. So the gist of the story is that the FCA plans to cut up to £1 billion from the compensation owed by car makers over their in-house lenders' involvement in the motor finance mis-selling scandal that really dominated the headlines over the course of last year. And the FCA's planned climb down comes after heavy lobbying by banks and car makers, which have warned the regulator that its £11 billion redress programme risks hurting investment in UK auto manufacturing unless it responds to their criticism of the scheme's design. And this long-running dispute really centres on, as we've talked about many times, on commissions paid by lenders to car dealers when they offered loans to customers. But what's emerged is that the OEMs, the car makers, it's a slightly different proposition, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, you got to remember that a lot of this lending that goes on within that captive finance from the manufacturers is very, majority of the time, is subsidised. So, low rate, subsidised down to 0% in some cases, and and they are backed by banks. And as you pointed out there, Curtis, this kind of does threaten investment in UK, automotive and lending. With the banks that are sat behind this, and it does point out that the issue has at times hammered the share prices of Britain's biggest banks, which have been forced to book billions of pounds in provision to cover compensation costs, and car makers such as Mercedes-Benz and BMW have set aside more than 500 million. But it does point out that two people briefed on the FCA plans said it was preparing to exempt car makers' in-house finance arms from having to pay compensation to at least some customers who were not clearly told that the finance to buy their vehicle came from a lender with exclusive ties to the car dealership. So it's starting to unwind itself a little bit here in terms of what has been going on and the challenges within it.
Yeah, definitely. And within the story, there's an interesting stat, because it says captive lenders provide more than 80% of new car finance in the UK, which, as you mentioned, tends to be heavily subsidised as an incentive for buyers to go through with the purchase on PCP or PCH, whatever. And about 40% of finance is used for used car sales, according to the FCA's figures. Now, the regulator has estimated that captive lenders would have to pay about 47% of the £8.2 billion it expects consumers to receive under the scheme, including admin costs. So the scheme is set to cost lenders £11 billion in total. So that's where that 11 billion comes from. But it does look as though those captive lenders will be partially let off the hook.
Yeah. And there's a nice little comment in from Adrian Daly. He's a good friend of ours, and he's the director of motor finance at the, as we know them, the FLA, or the Financing and Leasing Association trade body, who told the FT that what the FCA proposed on tied relationship is irrational and doesn't correspond to what the Supreme Court said. And that two people briefed on discussions with the regulator said that the FCA was only drawing up other changes to how the redress scheme is administered. So it's not quite finalised yet, but they are trying to move this thing forward pretty quickly now.
Yeah, definitely. So there will, I'm sure, be a further update on this, but it looks as though that part of the scheme is actually moving in a more appropriate direction now.
It is. So heading over to Motor Trade news, that buyers value honesty and no pressure sales the highest. And this is from the study that I know you're involved with, Curtis, from Motors. And it found that 31% of car buyers said the most important factor when visiting a dealership was the staff were honest about issues or imperfections.
Yeah, so this is the Consumer Insight Panel research that was conducted over the course of January by Motors and Cazoo, and it was independently researched. And it's just a fascinating snapshot of what buyers are thinking at the moment. And as you say, 31% of car buyers said the most important factor, they were given one factor to highlight as being the most important when visiting a dealership was that the staff were honest about issues or imperfections, while 20% wanted to be able to perform a test drive without feeling pressure from sales staff, and a further 15% wanted sufficient space and time to properly assess a car. And following on from that, almost a quarter, so around 23% of buyers said that receiving full answers to their questions without pressure to buy was the most important factor when making that initial first contact with a dealer. And buyers also valued honesty and transparency about a car's price and indeed its availability. That was at 17%. And also upfront information about specification and history was 15%.
Yeah, and there's a nice quote here from Luce Tugby, summing it up, who's the marketing director at Motors and Cazoo, said that their customer insight panel research shows transparency is key to building engagement and trust throughout the buying process. It's what customers say they want the most. Buyers typically spend 48 days researching for the right car, so sales teams play a crucial role in the process when either adding delight or destroying confidence, and goes on to say that pushy sales techniques can quickly put off buyers. Instead, salespeople should build trust by being product experts and provide reassurance through the process. So really, summing up the way the industry has changed, evolved, but it seems that there is obviously crucial is that relationship.
Yeah, and there's a lot of easy wins for dealers if they treat customers accordingly. Give them the space and be open and upfront about the vehicles they're selling, and that just helps build trust, which is something we know, but I think we all need reminding, don't we,
Yes.
about the sort of basic process of establishing that trust.
And this week, the government have announced yet another clear and concise incentive. I'm being facetious.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I'm glad it's clear and concise to you.
The story is covered in motortrader.com, and this is that the EV grant boost to cover almost half the cost of installing chargers for households and businesses. And this is that renters, flat owners, homeowners without driveways and businesses may save up to £500 when installing electric vehicle charge points, as a 40% increase in charge point grant amounts have been announced this week. Now, it's not quite black and white, and it did cause a little bit of confusion and questions, didn't it, that who is eligible and what does it go towards if you've not got a driveway?
Yeah, you're right, because the existing grants was it was a discount of £350, and as you say, this is now raised to £500 for those people that you actually mentioned. So it is people who rent, flat owners, homeowners without driveways, and businesses. And that's particularly interesting in itself, isn't it? Because if you're a homeowner without a driveway, where you're going to put your charger, how are you going to access your charger? And it's not explained in a lot of the coverage, certainly that I saw over the course of the week. But we did dig a little deeper into this story, and Autocar have actually come up with quite a good explanation, because it's saying that the cost will actually include installing a cross-pavement gully for homeowners who can't charge on their driveways. So that will be included where necessary, and of course when it's permitted by local councils. So that's actually quite a good move, I think.
Yeah, I mean it is, and I think it is a case of getting that message out there. And within the stories, they do talk about schools that are eligible for grants up to £2,000 per socket, building on a 3,700 sockets that are being installed to date, and that the councils will receive funding for the next 3 years to help them boost local charging infrastructure. So they are obviously getting behind very heavily this transition, and particularly around that access to charging, which is crucial, and it's talked about a lot across that sector. That what do you do when you haven't got that charging facility at home, and you are heavily reliant on public charging, which is, as we know, a lot more expensive than domestic charging when it comes to charging in electric vehicle, and can switch that kind of that cost of ownership the wrong way for a lot of the ones that do want to transition to an electric vehicle. So hopefully it's good news. Hopefully the message is well received and communicated. But I think at the minute it was just a little bit confusing as what do you do if you haven't got the property, the driveway to put a charger on? Where does that where does that grant go?
Yeah, and I think a useful benefit for this extension is potentially among used car buyers who maybe have ruled themselves out of buying an EV. But as you say, once this is communicated, hopefully by dealers, I mean, dealers will have a big role in playing here. That it becomes an option, it becomes a viable option to have an EV if they haven't got a driveway. So we'll see what happens there. So we'll be back with the rest of the week's headlines after this month's top tip from Ian Goldbold.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by Motors and Cazoo. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media. Next up is car retailing industry guru Ian Goldbold, sharing his top tips on how to steer your business to success.
Hello everyone, here we are at the final day of February and on the eve of plate change month. The used car market has continued to remain buoyant, with dealers reporting increased leads and sales, strong conversion rates, and vehicles also achieving solid pricing through auction channels. New car dealers are now turning their attention to plate change activity, with new car events taking place over the next 2 weeks, including prospect evenings designed to help achieve important Q1 targets and maximise ROI of their campaigns. We're also seeing dealers who do not usually open on Sundays doing so this weekend to support handovers, improve cash flow, and most importantly deliver a memorable experience for customers collecting their new 26 plate vehicles on day one. My top tip today though focuses on introducing a clear content marketing strategy. Most dealers are active on social media, however, many do not align this activity with a wider content strategy. Social media should be viewed as the tactical distribution channel rather than the foundation. The core of the strategy sits within the website, supported by integrated content such as blogs covering makes, models, locations, and key trends relevant to the business. The real online marketing advantage is currently being achieved by dealers adopting this approach. Notably, the fastest risers within the AM100 website sector in February have implemented structured content strategies. The benefits include website traffic, improved SEO performance and Google rankings, and reduced overall marketing spend. If you'd like to learn more or simply discuss all things automotive, feel free to contact me at Ian Goldbold at igcdigital.co.uk or simply connect with me via LinkedIn. Have a great weekend and a strong start to March. I'll see you all again next month.
Well, I feel pretty fired up now, don't you, Phil?
Yeah, I think this is a good one for everyone
Yeah.
listening this morning on Saturday morning ahead of, tomorrow morning as people turn up for their 26 plate new vehicle, or on Monday morning, depending on when the customers are picking the car up. But I think key is, I think Ian's very clear there. I think now's the time to really capitalise on that market hype and people's interest in that 26 plate, and to capitalise on that when you can.
Yeah, I think because we're so close to the industry, we don't we tend to forget just how exciting it is picking up a brand new car on the first day of the month. And interesting what Ian was saying there, that he's hearing of a lot of dealers who would normally close on a Sunday, but are making the effort to open on Sunday to deliver those cars. So yeah, there's big time for dealers this month.
So they don't sell too many cars on them days and then force themselves back into opening on a Sunday again. We'll see.
Oh yes, yeah.
Unintended consequences.
Yeah.
But we'll return to the headlines. A couple of quick headlines to finish off with, and heading over to AM Online. And this is Mitsubishi to appoint 60 dealer partners ahead of summer launches. Now, we talked about this previously, that following the exit from the UK, Mitsubishi Motors looking at coming back in. Obviously, very much now going back into that sector quite heavily, with 60 strong dealer network planned. And this is for the all-new Outlander PHEV, the plug-in hybrid, and the latest generation L200 Series 7 double cab pickup. Coming into a very challenging market there with them two products, obviously with the double cab as well, with the taxation changes on that one.
The double cab pickup. So I was doing a bit of research on this because I don't think it's covered in this particular story. It's priced around £36,000, so it'll compete really in that middle ground between the Ford Ranger and the Toyota Hilux. But as you say, that's actually quite a challenging part of the market to be in. And it's interesting that Mitsubishi have targeted that sector as part of its return to the UK. And we did cover this last year when it was mentioned. They're being brought back into the UK by International Motors, who will act as the importers. And it will work alongside its existing after-sales network. So when Mitsubishi pulled out of the UK, a lot of those dealers became after-sales specialists, and a surprising number of them actually, because within this story it says there's 105 of them. So if they can sign up 60 dealers and have that after-sales network in place and build a competitive range of vehicles, then I guess they're in with a chance, aren't they? But the market has changed so much since they exited, with the emergence of all these certainly Chinese brands, coming into the UK and filling the void left by Mitsubishi,
particularly in that plug-in hybrid sector as well. Just naming a few there, with Jayco and Moda and the product there that they've got within that sector, and BYD with the DMU seal that's continuing to do really well as that, a value cost of entry proposition. But again, we must remember that the L200 was a significantly large volume product for them back in the when they operated in the UK previously, and you see whether they've got a market that they can pick up there. So it'll be interesting to watch as they do, very quickly, as you say, they're picking up those existing Mitsubishi aftermarket specialists straight on back onto, get those signs out, polish them off a little bit, get them back above the door. But I think there is a comment in here from Sharon Townsend, who's the head of Mitsubishi Motors in the UK, saying they're absolutely delighted by the overwhelmingly positive response from the dealer community to the new Mitsubishi model range, and that's the enthusiasm and commitment they've seen from their current partners has been exceptional. In addition, strong customer demand in the latest Mitsubishi vehicle is clearly evident, and this gives them tremendous confidence as they build their presence in the UK market. So got to wish them all the best with that, because say we touched on it earlier. You've now got 75 circa, depends on what time of the day you look at it, manufacturers now, and when they were here previously it was more like 40 manufacturers. So it's a busy sector, but we'll watch and wish them all the best on that one.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a suggestion that sales will start from May. So certainly over the coming months, we'll be seeing who they're signing up. So we'll keep tabs on that, because I think it's going to be interesting to see who will be representing Mitsubishi, whether they're attracting new partners or if it's a mix of old partners and new partners. So we'll keep tabs on that.
Exactly. And final story for today, over in car dealer, and Cazana is back in the motor trade as Percayso Vehicle Intelligence announces rebrand. And this is obviously the Percayso Vehicle Intelligence rebrands as Cazana. The change marks a return for the brand, which was previously bought by Cazoo back in 2021. I'll take you back to the old days there, Curtis, when you were monitoring the Cazoo store. It might even still be on your wall in the whole Cazoo Alex Chesterman story. But this is bosses say the new name will coincide with significantly enhanced data portal. So, obviously it's great news for these guys. We know that Darren Martin, ex Cap HPI, is working with the guys there at Percayso, now Cazana, and really looking at sort of getting that simplicity of the brand and the name back in the market again.
Yeah, and it does make perfect sense, doesn't it? Because Percayso as a brand name is a bit difficult to say for starters, but it's also better known in the insurance sector, which is where it came from. Whereas Cazana has that instant, it's instantly recognisable within the motor trade, within our sector. So it makes perfect sense. And this change, according to the report here in Car Dealer, follows 18 months of intensive development focused on delivering a significantly enhanced data portal, which Cazana says has been designed to meet car dealers' increasingly sophisticated needs. So they've been working hard behind the scenes, developing what they have, and this will definitely raise the presence there of this service.
Yeah, and the speaking to Car Dealer about the change was Ian Lilly, who is Cazana's director of Automotive, saying that the name Percayso isn't, as you say, isn't known within the automotive world. It's known within insurance. It just makes sense now to go back to Cazana, which was building up a good reputation before it was purchased by Cazoo and potentially mothballed initially, which is obviously where Percayso came into it. And with the rebrand and the relaunch of the product back into the automotive world, it just makes sense to back to a name that people know and trust. So this is great news. I think, as you say there, it's a stronger brand. It's a recognised brand as well within the wider automotive sector, not just the insurance sector. But we'll see what they do.
Yeah, and really marks the return of the welcome return of two brand names with Mitsubishi and Cazana. You see what I did there, Phil?
You did. There's some planning in this one.
The second half around that.
So we've had a busy show there. I think, as I say, right at the start there, do catch up on the full podcast interview with Jeremy Yea from Cap HPI. As we said on the full interview as well, if you've not had a look at the full editorial, that is available through the social channels from the team there at Cap HPI or on the Cap HPI website. And they're always happy to jump on a call, join a conversation around what's happening in the market. And again, with Ian Goldbold there, as Ian said, March is a crucial month for the sector. It's a crucial time to capitalise on the market. And if you do need any help then Ian is always there to support and get involved with, and do reach out to him on his email address that he shared, or directly via the social channels. But hopefully we've covered the majority of the big stories, and a couple of the big ones back there with the FCA redress, Curtis.
Yeah, definitely another packed show. But unfortunately, that's all for now. So many thanks to you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines in our newsletter on Monday morning. To subscribe, just search LinkedIn for the Motor Trade Radio podcast.